Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
All good. Okay, welcome to the Monday, November 15th, 2021 meeting of the East Lampeter Township Board of Supervisors. My name is Corey Meyer, and we have a full group here of supervisors, so no one on Zoom. Okay, we'll continue with the pledge to the flag. Please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have public comment for non-agenda items only. Is anyone here for public comment for non-agenda items? Or any non-agenda item public comment via email? Okay. Okay, we'll move on. The agenda, we have a few things under the consent agenda. We have 4A, which is approval of the November 15th, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting agenda. Just one change, gentlemen. We have 7B and 7C will no longer be on the agenda. They'll come, Hutch, you said, to the next meeting, correct? December 6th, great. And I lost my thanks. Appreciate it. We have B, approval of minutes of the Monday, October 18th, 2021 regular meeting. And then 4C, approval to pay invoices from all funds to total of $1,514,871.82. There are a few items of note, which I'll read off. The first is $596,971.63 to Wilmington Trust for debt service payments, $94,400 to Deacon Equipment for a new chipper, $12,000 to Lemza for the 2021 contribution, $138,378.35 to Liberty Restoration Construction for roof repairs, $45,432.50 to Susquehanna Municipal Trust for quarterly workers' comp coverage, and $10,096 to American Rock Salt for road salt. So those are the items for the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
By Dave, second by John. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public for the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have recognition of service to the township, Mr. Dan. Dan, we have a plaque for you. I know everyone is here for this. I mean, it's so I'll read it off. In recognition of and grateful appreciation for outstanding service to East Lampeter Township, having served as a member of the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission, serving as a member from January 2006 to November 2021 for a total of 16 years of service. Present this 15th day of November 2021 by the Board of Supervisors of East Lampeter Township. And thank you. Good to see you. I always enjoy when I get to see a planning commission meeting, either online or in person, Dan is always asking great questions and
Thank you, Dan.
always helping us make our jobs easier. The planning commission gives a lot of insight on really everything that comes in front of us related to planning. So we love your input and we love your recommendations. So we appreciate your service.
Can I miss it? Can I miss it?
I just want to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve. I want to say one thing, the township, I think, the planning commission, the board of supervisors, was progressive township in the county. Very honestly, and I was fortunate to serve with John Taylor, the nurses, and our chairman. I see.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And they wrote me into this.
Yeah. Thanks for your service.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, like Corey said, we really appreciate what the planning commission does. Okay. That's great. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I would say stay involved, Dan, right? We have a few volunteer firefighters in the room as well. And that's what, makes our township so great. The volunteers that step up and, come to meetings and have an opinion and help us out. So I appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda, we have 6. We have a LEMSA presentation from Bob May. Bob, how are you? Sure.
It's all right. You'll find it. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah, thanks.
Please.
Yeah, please. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again for your time this evening. So I'm here this evening to talk in a very.
Yeah, got it. You can even actually take it off. It's probably the best.
You just pull that right off there, Bob, if you
Yeah.
want to, and hold it or just stack those. Yep.
Better?
That's good.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. So I'm here this evening to talk briefly about EMS and some of the challenges that we're dealing with. I'm also here to ask you for an increase in support. So the cover letter, in every township we serve, and there's 20, received the same presentation. I am asking for a $56,000 payment support, up from $12,000, and that was determined based on utilization. We took total calls, divided it by the number of calls in each Peter Township, and came up with 8%. If I could have you turn to the second page. This schedule represents the municipalities that we serve, the percent of utilization in those municipalities, the requested support, the current support, and then the difference. Next page. Again, I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Please stop me if there's any questions.
Sure.
Second page, again, the municipalities, current support per 911 call. So you can see for East Peter Township, it's about $6.67. Support per resident, 70 cents. Utilization is 10.6. And what that represents is about 11% of the members the residents in East Peter Township requested annual services in 2019. I did not include 2020 because it's a pandemic year and it was skewed low. Net collection, we bill for services. For every dollar we bill, we collect 46 cents in East Peter Township. Next page. This is a schedule of our subscription results by township. East Peter compared to the other metrics. And East Peter is about 14.5% return. Average is just under 21%. All right, next page. This information is specific to East Peter Township. It's just 4 years of data. 2021 is just 8 months. This represents all class. Class 1 is advanced. Class 2 is basic with lights and sirens. Class 3 is basic, no lights, no sirens. And you can see that about 55 or so percent of the calls in East Lampeter Township are the highest level or the highest acuity. Center bottom graph represents total calls per year. 2021 is annualized, and then the bottom right are the average per month. Next page, please. Again, specific to East Lampeter Township, these are the nature of the calls. Nothing really stands out as unusual except for vehicle accidents. Vehicle accidents in East Lampeter Township are in the top 5 or 6. I usually see that toward the bottom of the top 10. Psychiatric, emotional, top 10, that's common. I can tell you 10 years ago, that was in the bottom 30. That has come up over the years. About every 4th call on average within our 911 response area is a mental health call. Wow. Other things I want to point out: gas leaks, medical alarms, public service, fire calls, rescue, water, roadway investigations, and CL alarm with BLS. These are non-verbal calls. Next page. This information lays out payer mix by township, what is written off and what is collected. And just to refer you to the very bottom bar graph, 48%. You can see how you stack up with other municipalities on net collections. Next page. Just some quick facts I want to cover. We are a 501c3. We have been since day one. And if you're not familiar, we kind of came out of the hospitals. We came out of Community Hospital in St. Joe's back in 1996 when the 2 hospitals merged their ambulance services. A few years later, LGH became part of us, and then subsequently 6 other services became part of Acus. No financial support from the hospitals. I get that question all the time. We're not owned by the hospitals, and the hospitals cannot provide financial support because it's against the law. I think called the START law. It can be seen as incentivizing us to bring the patients. We are nationally accredited, only 1 of 5 in the state, 1 of 188 in the country. And you can see our station locations. And we're going to break 41,000 calls this year. We have 155 employees presently. We need 185. So we're down about 35 employees with a vacancy rate of just over 20%. And we're one of the better ones, believe it or not. I know colleagues that are in the 40, 45% vacancy rate. It's pretty serious. Fleet size 46, our budget's 12.5 million. You can see how our revenue breaks down in our top 6 expenses. And 2 more pages. Next page. This is our basic life support response area, the green. That overlays the map. And then the last page is our advanced life support response area. So the need for support is manifested by the need to increase our EMT started $15 an hour. Our competition used to be other ends. It's not anymore. It's Sheets, it's Reuters, it's Amazon. You know, it's retail, and we cannot compete with that at $15 an hour. That's EMTs, 15 an hour, 21 starting for paramedics. These are the 2 levels. $15 an hour is not livable wage, and most of our EMTs work elsewhere. And we are seeing a significant decline in recruitment and retention because of our wages. We have to get our wages up, and we're looking at getting our wages to $18 an hour for starting for EMTs, and $24, $25 an hour for paramedics. Every dollar of payroll that we increase our wages, that's $100,000 to the bottom line. What we want to do is budget another $850,000 for next year. We want to put 150 of our own money in, and that means start with savings, which is a slippery slope. And then 700,000 that makes up the difference is distributed among the 20 municipalities based on. So the questions I normally get when I do these presentations, well, it's not a local problem, it's a county problem. And I get that all the time. And of course, the county commission, they say this is a local problem. In the meantime, we're going back and forth. And Corey, you sat on the stakeholders. Meeting.
Yep.
Well, that the commissioners have their people done. They all also get what you bill for the service. Well, we do bill. It doesn't mean we collect. So we have at ready calls. We're paying staff to be at ready, even though they're not responding to calls. But this staffing issue, I've been doing this since 1976 when I got into the business. I have never seen this bad, and it's critical. And I want to emphasize that this is not a guarantee as far as continued service. We will have to look at the possibility of scaling the service. A lot of ambulance services. I know, well, the last time I checked, 200 ambulance services out of business just in the Colorado. And I know there's others that are out of service. It's bad, and I'm not an artist necessarily, but I can share with you that the trends are not good as far as continuing. Not only do we have staffing, we have offload issues at the hospitals. We are waiting sometimes almost 2 hours to get our patients off the order. That takes a truck out of service. I stopped last Friday at the hospital because we had, I think, 6 ambulances in the whole area. So these are patients on litters tying up trucks, and they're between an hour and 2 hours. We had 6 of our ambulances out of circulation because they're tied up trying to get their patient. The emergency department had an empty bed. There was not an empty bed in that department. I'm not blaming LGH, but they were busting at the seams. And this is a continued problem. Mental health, the post-traumatic stress, the suicide rate across the country for EMS has doubled. And so there's very, very negative trend. So what's the long-term solution? And I had a chance to talk to Mr. Hutchison a month or so ago about the possibility of EMS developing a third. I don't have a lot to talk about yet because there's more to research, and I do want to come back and talk with him about this, as well as the other municipal leaders. And that is the idea of establishing the authority as a long-term solution. Before I know you're not.
Yeah.
I know it's a talk about. There are 6 EMS authorities in the Commonwealth. Not a perfect fix. And we're looking probably 4 to 6 years if we do develop. What this does for us gives us the ability to put weeds on properties for that day. And by tax, I'm talking $25 per household per year. That's what I'm doing. Everybody pays that amount to be small. So,
Bob, that number you just threw out, Bob, that's to get to the $12.4 million budget? Is that to get to something that you see as higher, that is a far more sustainable revenue stream? How'd you come up with the $25 per?
well, so we did Lancaster EMS and a counterpart, Scott Kingsville from Northwest EMS. We partner on a lot of this stuff, and we determined together that if we can get $25 per parcel in each town, that will get us to a sustainable level where we can put more money in the employees' pockets, address wages, and also address benefits. And if we can do that, we're going to be more successful with our recruitment and our retention. It's about a sustainable. Every year, I don't know what the townships are going to get, and you can see there's someone in this list that don't get that.
Right.
And I had 2 townships that pushed back pretty hard. Can't afford it. And I understand that as well. And in those areas, we have to consider the idea of reducing services, scaling back hours of coverage, and even eliminating, which doesn't suggest they won't get annual services, but what it does do is it will increase response times. Double or triple response times. We have ambulances in Angola going to we have ambulances in Ephrata coming down to the southern part of the county. We are going to Ephrata. mutual aid coverage is, we're going anywhere because of the limited resources. So less resources, you have to cover a broader area.
And do you
It
think
is a
the,
serious problem.
sorry, Bob, do you think the authority will help with collections as well? I mean, you're currently at what, 49 pennies per dollar collected. Do you think that will help, or will that help with negotiations with the insurance companies?
So Corey, what that's going to do is that's going to help the bad debt portion of the collection. It's not going to help the contractual allowance.
Okay.
And I know I briefly talked about this, but just to refresh your memory, contractual allowance is the difference between what we do and what we collect. So if you have Medicare or Medicaid, we can bill $1,000.
Right. You're not going to
We're
get
only going to
right.
collect $200.
Right. Sure.
That difference is written on contractual. There's nothing we can do about that.
Okay.
And the other issue you may recall is direct pay.
Yep. Yeah, explain that to the rest of the population, because people will get upset when you explain this.
So, the direct pay issue, this is the challenge for EMS across the state. If you have commercial insurance, many commercial insurances, EMS does not contract because the rates are terrible. They're often worse than entitlements. So what happens is, if we don't contract with them, the payer pays our prevailing rate, but they send the check to the patient.
Right. So I call 911. I have commercial insurance. I call 911. You take me to the hospital. I go back home. I get a check in the mail. And what do I do with that check?
You keep the check.
I keep the check. I don't send it to you.
That's correct. And we have patients that admit to doing that. And it's not really,
Multiple times a year.
oh, it's 40%. 40% across the state keep their check. We have to chase it down, and that costs money to do that.
Right.
We'll get the checks directly if we participate. And we won't do it because it's a restful 2 years to
Right.
to the patient.
Yep.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yep.
So thank you for your time this evening. As
Do you
always,
wanna
I
mention the
appreciate
budget?
it.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Questions from the.
you want-
I'll bring it. You can bring it up too. But any questions from the board to Bob?
Is there a place we can get a copy of your budget documents?
You bet. I can send you, your tax returns for the last couple of years. I will send those to.
Yeah.
Hutch.
Yeah, I actually reviewed on the IRS website 990s. You do have a positive, you do. However, rigs are expensive, and I get it. It's like, if you don't have a positive, you're going to be gone in 2 years, right? So you have to have some, revenue over expenses, right?
We do. So we have investments, and we've been very successful at those investments. They're capital reserves, and we're looking at spending probably $2.5 million to buy a piece of property to expand our fleet services. So that is something we have to do as well.
Sorry.
I guess,
Please go.
Yeah,
for it.
thanks, Bob, for coming before us as you do every year, and I always appreciate the presentation. You do a great job of capturing your metrics and then analyzing and presenting them. I'm sure Ethan will have a good time tearing them apart, looking at them as he generally does, and I will trust that you and he will probably have some fun conversations about that.
And as always, anybody is welcome to do a write-up.
Yes.
I'm glad you do it. Pay you to do that. We are looking at in our budget conversations for this next year, a very sizable change in where we've been. 2008, I think about $6,000 or so, $8,000. 2018, excuse me, 2018. So we're looking at at really making a significant change. We've grown it every year, as you know. We're looking at really making a very sizable change to it this year. I always love innovative ideas, the authority. Keep talking to Ralph about it. I'm sure he's got some great ideas there. The challenge that I always face when I look at these things, and we've talked about this with our own emergency services, our fire departments. Set aside taxes, set alone taxes for things that, in the end, as governing authority, we have responsibility for these things. Do we accept responsibility and add up to it? Do we listen to the taxpayers and tell them what we think that we should be doing? Maybe not all governing bodies do that well, or maybe not all governing bodies do that the same. But I just, was a little hesitant when I hear, forming authorities to do things that, in some ways we need to be doing as governing bodies, but I like the ideas and I appreciate that you're looking at those spots. So I think taxpayers of this community can, I think, be very pleased with what they're going to see us do this next year to support your efforts. Perhaps maybe not at the levels that you're shooting for, but we're getting there.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, next on the agenda, we have 7A, time extension record conditionally approved plan 21-4, 821 Horning Road. This plan is requesting an additional 180 days to record the stormwater management plan. Anything else touch on that?
No.
Okay.
I move we approve the extension.
Thank you, Glenn. Second by Ethan. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. B and C are tabled to the next meeting. We have 7D, ordinance regarding no parking on Highview Drive. I'm just going to give a quick overview of the ordinance.
Sure. What the ordinance would accomplish if the board adopts it is to change the no parking restriction on Highview Drive from what it is currently, which is 220 feet from Old Philadelphia Pike, which the board adopted this past summer, to 155 feet from Old Philadelphia Pike on both sides of Highview Drive.
I know letters went out to neighbors.
Yes.
You here tonight. Any other comments? And assuming this was in the newspaper as well. It was properly.
Yes, it has been
Yeah.
properly advertised.
Okay, sounds good. Any comments from the board first? I'd love to hear from the public. Anyone else here who wants to talk about this item? Okay. Anyone from the public? Jeff? Just want to state your name and that works.
Easier for me.
Perfect.
Talking to it. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe I know most of you, some on a professional level, and some I've been to your house a couple of times for public service calls and whatnot. But my name is Jeffrey Keynes. I'm a resident of 110 Crestmont Avenue. I know I'm here in fire department attire tonight. I just came from training, actually ducked out early because while I am passionate about that, I'm also passionate about this. So there's been lots of talk on this subject on both streets, not only Crestmont Avenue, but also Highview. Being a resident of Crestmont, this really affects me because where that sign stops, it is right in front of my entire property. So while I believe the intent was to review Highview Drive, I'm hoping I can still comment if that is allowed on the Crestmont portion of things as well. So as it currently stands, as I said prior here, the sign is right in front of my house. I cannot park any of my vehicles or have any guests over in front of my property whatsoever. I believe the original concern was around safety. People were not able to come off of 340 or come from either street and come down due to visibility options. Is that correct so far? Roughly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that being said, I mean, it's my personal opinion that I am far enough back from the edge of 340 that I think the sign just kind of blown out of proportion ever so slightly. But being somebody that was brought up with the understanding that, hey, don't just come out here and complain about a problem, I tried to pitch a solution to it. So came up with a little bit of a draft. Hutch, I had sent it to you. I'm not sure if you sent it out to the other supervisors.
We received it.
So that's my proposal. Is there any way, since this seems to be somewhat of a fluid document here, it is not enacted 100%, that like my counterpart in 110 Highview, can we back this up? Or really what I'm seeking is having one side of the street closed down. That seems like an acceptable alternative that we can get in and out. I can still park in front of my house, have people over, whatever, and not clog up the works 100%, creating a safety issue. So that is my question.
And you're on the west side of Crestmont.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And the email that you sent to Hutch was removing the parking from the west side, your side of the road,
Correct.
but keep it on the east side of the road, which is closer to the chiropractor.
Yes, talking with Dr. Rogers, he's going to come up and comment with this here in a minute. But if we can still just kind of reduce this back a little bit on both sides, I think that would be an acceptable compromise if the board is willing to entertain that.
And just a question, how many feet is it from 340 to where you believe it should stop? Is it also 155 feet?
I have not taken any measurements. I cannot do that. Just looking at the map here, I know I don't have a laser pointer at me, but just looking at the driveway where the doctor's office comes out, I believe that's probably far enough down from that, but I don't have any measurements on that.
Okay.
But once again, if it was just one side, it would probably take care of the problem.
Your address is 110.
Yes, sir.
You were going to say something, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, the roads are on a little bit of a skew, so it's not going to be exactly the same measurement. The current restriction on Crestmont adopted this past summer is 175 feet, and that essentially is at the rear property line of the chiropractor office property. That's where those signs are placed on both sides. Mr. Keynes' driveway is just beyond that sign on the west side.
Right there.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So that is my pitch. If you would consider that,
thank you.
Actually,
and
appreciate it. Thank
just
you.
to explain, we can't change anything in the ordinance. What we can, the only thing we can vote on is this. If we would come up with any additional ordinance, we'd have to go through the process of putting in newspaper, drafting it, putting in newspaper, and so forth. So
I understand.
We'll continue the conversation. Dr. Rogers, or anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else for public comment? Sure. Just going to state your name just for the public. I know that.
I'm Dr. Marty Rogers. I'm the principal on the
Need to pick the microphone. Pick it up and just put, that's okay. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Sorry I couldn't be here at the last meeting, but my son was, I guess, manager was able to attend. And I was here a couple meetings ago. That would work. What he's suggesting. I have no problem restricting the parking on both edges of my property. As I stated 2 meetings ago when I was here, or whatever that was, we want to be a good neighbor. There were some comments made in some of the minutes, which I think are inaccurate, that our traffic is more now than ever. Our traffic has been what it is since 3 months moving at the location. I mentioned at that meeting that our practice grew when we went to that location. And so he was talking about if you restrict it on our side, restrict it on both sides. No problem. And then they can park on his side. That solves, what's the other number there? That solves the gentleman on the corner. That would solve his issue. 1709 Old Philly Pike, and he'd be able to park there. But line of sight obstruction. So if you want to restrict it on Crestmont, which would be northeast side, and then on Highview, northwest side, that we will not be parking on our edges of our property. And that makes just parking on one side. So I've stated ever since the beginning, it's not a safety issue. The school bus stops at one location. The neighbors have not liked our business being there for 7 years. They started before we even opened up. They started calling the police. Oh, they're parking on the street. They're parking on the street. It wasn't even us. It was the construction people. We couldn't even let them finish the property. They were trying to put in the parking lot. I let the neighbors park in my parking lot. When we're not there. No problem. I said that before. We're trying to be a great neighbor. My grandson's going to be getting off that bus real soon. So if there's anybody concerned about safety, it's me. I'm a doctor. I don't want people getting hurt. There. I treat auto accident patients 365 days a year almost. So Neighbors haven't liked it. They found a way to tweak their ears, call it unsafe, and it worked. So now I'm just asking for, well, either way, we're going to be stuck with something. So limit my parking, limit my side on both sides. I mean, if we have to, we'll park across the street. We can have this parking, and then he'll have this parking in front of his house. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you.
Questions to Dr. Rogers or Mr. Keynes before any other comments? Okay, any other public comment? Okay, so gentlemen, we have this ordinance in front of us. Why don't we discuss this ordinance first, and then we can have a discussion about the public comment about any future ordinance or any future changes.
Sure. So we only have this ordinance
Yes,
in front
yes,
of us, Mr. Chairman.
One
So
ordinance.
That's what we're
And
discussing.
yeah, so
Yeah.
again, this will reduce,
Sure.
as Hutch described it, on the
Yep.
to 155 feet on Highview Drive, north side.
So over the past couple of months, we had neighbors come to Township, talk to the staff, talk to the board. Staff went out, looked at the situation that was being presented. Staff went back and looked at some regs based upon PennDOT regs, trying to establish a standard for how we would to approach the concerns that were raised. And the ordinance that we passed addressed parking on both roads, Crestmont, Highview,
Yep.
both sides in certain depth. This ordinance is in response to further conversation that we had with the community about addressing perhaps Highview and pulling the no parking restriction further south on Highview towards 340.
Correct.
And that's all we have in front of us at this point. So, my comments are that I think the ordinance as we've written it here is certainly trying to respond to the many needs of that neighborhood and of that community. Not responding to any one person who is somehow complained to us, and we're responding to that as a governing body. We are trying to walk through this methodically with some prudence, putting staff in place to look at this, taking a look at what PennDOT regs call for, and listening to the community and the neighborhood. So I think it's a good approach. I think we're pulling the signs back to 155 feet along Highview. If there is some other additional consideration for us on other streets about this ordinance that affects that, I would certainly be open to those conversations. But as this ordinance, I think it's an appropriate response to what is currently out there. So, okay.
Any other comments from the board or accept the motion? Okay. Okay. Can I get a motion for the ordinance?
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance amending ordinance number 116, which regulates traffic and parking in the township by amending Article 3, Section 2, subparagraph A, revise areas on Highview Drive where parking shall be prohibited to reflect no parking on Highview to 155 feet north along Highview from State Route 340 north.
Okay, motion made.
Second.
Second by Ethan. Any other comments from the board on the motion? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay. And just to continue this conversation, is there any appetite for making any changes to Crestmont or any additional changes to Highview?
We have to do a separate orders.
You would have to. I'm just looking for any additional,
Can't be amended.
cannot be amended.
Well, what Mr. Keynes had to say makes sense for his street, so I would think we should check it out.
So Glenn, asking staff to take a look at it again and see if that's a potential option.
Right.
The big issue to me is still the perceived safety issue, which a number of the residents do think is a safety issue, which is the people going in and out of that parking lot. So whatever the distance is to the parking lot seems to make the most sense. You have people turning using both lanes from there to the 340. So if anything, I'd be open to sitting on it for a while, seeing how it is, and potentially changing in the future if things improve or don't improve. If nothing changes, then we didn't do anything. But I think it's worth letting it sit there for a while and see how it actually is used.
Additional comments?
No, I think that's a prudent approach, Ethan. Let's allow the ordinance to sit as it is written currently for a period of time, and then let's see what happens. Did it address the issues of ingress and egress onto Crestmont, onto Highview? Did it address the issues of safety, of sight distance, of congestion? If we've addressed that, then we've done the right thing. If there's not much change in behavior and it's affecting the quality of someone's experience of their neighborhood, they can't use parking in front of their home, they can't park in front of their house in the grass or on the road, I'm certainly open to considering it again too. Crestmont, we did put the signage almost at the property line of the business, trying to mark the areas of concern. As Ethan said, people definitely were calling to our attention concerns with the traffic flow in and out of the business. There's none of us that want to cause any deleterious effect to the business from this. That's not anything any of us have ever set out to do. Infill piece of property in an older community, older part of our community, urban growth area, good use of a parcel for a great thriving business that obviously has increased and become ever more successful. So we're thrilled with that. We've got to balance interests here on this body. That's what we do. We have had neighbors that were at the last meeting that thanked us for trying to address a concern. I think a number of them did actually call out the business owners, allowing them to use the property, which I was glad to hear that the neighbors were all trying to see the silver lining and everything there. So at this point, I'm not looking to put out another amendment to an ordinance or to change the ordinance that's currently in place.
Well, I recall having a lengthy conversation about Crestmont before. We had, talked about a lot of options. I believe that where we ended up is prudent for now, and revisit it as in several months, perhaps, if neighbors feel that is appropriate.
Okay, so I'm hearing some consistency that, what Mr. Keynes suggested is definitely something we could look at, but at this point, let's wait. Let's get this ordinance enacted as we voted on tonight, and then wait and see essentially. So can staff, one, keep an eye on it, and hopefully the public as well keep us continue to look at it and modify if needed with a new ordinance. Okay. Any other comments from staff? Clear? Okay. Okay. Move on to the next agenda item, 8A, 1724 Lincoln Highway Stormwater Plan 2121 time extension for township action. Applicants offering a time extension to March 2nd, 2022 for township review and action. This will provide the applicant time to revise their plan, address comments provided by township staff. Any other information about this item?
No, we're within the timeframe now to provide an extension.
Make a motion that we approve the time extension to March 2nd, 2022 for 1724 Lincoln Highway Stormwater Plan number 21-21.
Okay, motion made by John,
Second.
second by Dave. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we got the Studler, 8D Studler Land Development Plan 2125, time extension for township action. Applicants offering a time extension of February 21st, 2022 for township review and action. This will provide the applicant time to revise their plan to address comments provided by township staff. Any other comments on that one? Nope.
Same situation.
Same situation. Great. Motion?
Yep, make a motion that we approve the Studler Land Development Plan number 2125, time extension to February 21st, 2022.
Second.
Moved by John, second by Dave. Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we have 8C High Associates Stormwater Management Plan 2131-1905 Horseshoe Road. Chris, is that you? Been waiting for you to couldn't figure out which item you were on, so there you go.
Good evening, Chris Bernard with RGS Associates, here tonight before you to talk about a small stormwater management plan that High has within their business park out at Greenfield. I have some copies of it. Guys have, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Via Zoom is Mike Rush from High, so answering operational questions that you may have this evening. Again, I mentioned we're before you for a stormwater management plan. It's the address is 1905 Horseshoe Road. It's about a 27-acre parcel. If you're familiar with it, it's on the east side of Horseshoe Road. It's not too far from Sky Zone within the business park, and it's an existing warehousing use out there. Really, what we're trying to do is continue to attract and retain businesses in the township. So High's in a position where they're turning over a tenant, and instead of having a vacant building, they have an opportunity to fill it again with another tenant. That tenant came with a request specific to the property to just have an additional door built on the side of the building. That would be on the, if you're looking at the page on the right side of the building where we show a hatched area where we'd like to put down some pavement to allow access up to that new side entry garage door into the side of the building. So because of that, again, we do the stormwater management plan. We do not have any BMPs or best management practices structural, such as inlets, stormwater basins, and so forth. When this idea was presented to us at RGS from High, we kind of just jumped into the ordinance and said, okay, how can we accomplish what we're trying to achieve? We had a pre-application phone call with staff, with Scott Keynes, and we came to the conclusion that really what we're looking to do is we're just looking to add some pavement in common drainage areas and just remove pavement in the end and right. The same. So in summary, the existing impervious out there ends up being decreased as a result of this plan. So we not only make sure that we take away what we're proposing, but in consulting with EMA, there is some language in the ordinance that says essentially we're making up the past sin. So we're taking an additional 20% impervious away. So that's what this plan picks up. That's actually a revision to the plan with comment in the letter by EMA dated November 10th. So we've gone through that review letter. We have direction from EMA on how to address those comments, and our plan has been revised to show that additional 20%. So essentially, we're taking away parking area. Yeah. And that's really about it as far as that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see the property can be used, and sounds good. Any questions from the board to Chris?
What about the line striping that is there parking going to continue at this location?
Yeah, there is some. We will be taking away some parking spaces. I believe
The existing parking spaces are 315, and the plan as revised would be 278. So because of that additional 20%, we end up taking away more parking. I know there, I guess, there was a question about potentially taking away some striping down in that area. In talking that through High, their desire would be to keep that striping. Being private property, they're not aware on their record of any safety issues that we've had back there. We did run truck turning movements. That's why you see the shape there in the southeast corner for the trailer coming around that turn. And it does result in a reduction of parking. So what's out there today, we end up reducing it by 12%, which is 37 parking spaces again from what's out there today. So we do reduce the number of parking spaces and we reduce the impervious.
So just to be clear, in that bottom section where you're removing the impervious, no, where those cars are on the other side, where the mouse is moving, there's still gonna be stripes, just no one's gonna park there.
It's striped for parking.
Yeah, people could park.
And
Okay.
maybe Mike, if you want to
Yeah.
chime in on that.
Yeah.
As far as whether you know people will utilize those parking spaces that are striped off there.
The majority of the people will be parking out front, but I didn't know why that parking striping would have to be removed, since it's part of that throughway now where the tractor trailers go through now. Just didn't know why that would have to be removed. That's all.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Any reason?
Yeah, staff's concern is the conflict between having tractor trailers and additional ones. Since there's going to be a door back there, we would expect there's going to be additional traffic through that area, conflicting with the passenger vehicles that would be parked there.
Yeah, I don't see any conflict. I mean, my warehouse, our parking and the trucks are always in the same driveway, and it's just big cars. So I have no problem leaving the parking and the striping there.
It is secondary parking, as Mike pointed out, there's a large field on the west side of the front building. And that, clearly people were utilizing that area. And at that time, when we go around, actually, it's kind of interesting. What's it called? Maps. Not maps.
Earth.
There's the 3D view.
Oh, walking? Yeah. Like,
You can drive basically.
yeah. You're
Street
right.
view.
Street view.
But it actually goes all the way around. So I'm
Right.
surprised it must have driven around. See that they're on track. So that activity is happening. So we do have, definitely appreciate that. You're not trying to have that.
Sure.
My opinion, based on the history of eyes, they haven't had an issue in terms of safety or incidents.
I have a question, Chris. On your drawing, why is Jefferson marked Horseshoe Road?
That's a mistake.
I mean,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
well,
Yeah,
I was like, I
it's
knew,
right.
I couldn't figure out. I didn't look it up till now. I looked at all the writings of this, over the past 2 days as I was preparing for the meeting, and it just never struck me to question, why is that called 1905 Horseshoe Road? Now I can see why. The front, there's a very out to Horseshoe Road. But then I'm looking at the picture, I'm like, it's not Horseshoe. It does not go through the park like that. All right.
It's the west.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. I don't have any issue either, Mr. Chairman, with that,
Neither do I.
the issue of that. I mean, I guess it is. Yeah. Don't park cars or whoever the employees are.
We're just, when you're reversing what's behind you. Okay. So we have stormwater management plan 1905. Chris, any other comments? I'm sorry. Okay. Motion.
Make a motion to approve the stormwater plan as presented.
Second. Motion made by Ethan, second by Glenn. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, gentlemen, that's just to be sure, that's subject to the DMA review letter.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Sorry, the only thing was the striping.
Okay.
We were fine not including that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, getting lazy later in the meeting. Sorry. It's only an hour in. Okay, next we have discussion regarding zoning ordinance amendments. Ethan, you want to give,
I'll give the high view and then
Sure.
I can address some of, hopefully some of Ralph's concerns that he shared in his memo.
Yeah.
You folks will remember, we've been discussing this for a couple of years now. December of 2019 is when I first was, it's where all my drafts start for the commercial one. The other zoning amendments go back a few years before that. So the big one is looking to adjust and amend our commercial 2, commercial 3 zoning areas, following the trend that we did with the Rockvale overlay. So when we did that overlay, we added a bunch of uses to those zones. And if you remember, the County Planning Commission's comments at the time were, why don't we extend some of those to the neighbors? So it's good for Rockvale, it's good for the neighbors. So I made that comment at that point, and we've had multiple conversations. It's been on the schedule several times, the agenda to discuss adding some of those. At one point, we even went through, started to get into the weeds of which ones. So the goal here, whether it's a resolution or some other thing, is to try to get to where we're moving past high level conversation. Because at the high level, the goal is, let's add back some of these uses that we added back into the Rockvale overlay zone to the rest of that commercial zone along Lincoln Highway, East Lancaster. So by adding uses and density, it would remove development stress on farmland. It would create a more sustainable tax base, and more importantly, give a lot more flexibility to property owners to meet the changing demands of the market, as opposed to waiting until it's too late. All the same arguments that were made by the Rockvale folks when they came into that overlay zone. So the big picture, what I'm trying to do here is, rather than have us get into the weeds and come up with every little specific thing we want to have done in that, it's have staff take the general concept and go and then create a working draft, bring it back to us for review, get some feedback on that, make sure we're on the same page. They can add conditions for different uses that make sense. And then once we've gone through that process a couple of times, then we go through a normal process of engaging all of our neighbors, stakeholders. And then if we like it, then we would pass that amendment. Because I think what we've done in the past is we've spun our wheels, where either we talk generally and we like the concept, but nothing moves forward past that point, or we start to get into the weeds and we end up with a long meeting that doesn't get us anywhere either. So the big one is trying to make sure that staff knows what the mood of the board is, which is, I think we're generally supportive of adding additional uses back into the C2, C3 region. But there's varying concerns over which conditions people should be in order to be able to utilize those uses. So that's the big picture. I know Ralph sent out a memo, just a few issues there. Maybe it's in the physical packet, but I didn't see the attorney's letter in there, which you referenced, but I'm not sure the rest. But the curative amendments are issues of I think by addressing these zoning issues, we could also address potential curative amendments, which anyone could bring now. The big one is, what we're trying to do is, to me, this isn't wide ranging. This is 2 zones. This is adding uses, which we added to the Rockvale overlay. I've actually been pulling a lot of my information from our comprehensive plan and the LIMC comprehensive plan. Because if you go through those comprehensive plans, and I could go through in more detail with those, but broadly, we should be putting housing where people work. We should be putting other uses where people work. So we've reduced commute times. We should be doing more mixed use development where people can live above a commercial area. So you could have commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor. And you start to create that community feel where it's more mixed use, and that gives you a lot more sustainability. So if you go through the LIMC's plan, or even our regional Conestoga Valley comprehensive plan, Everything in those is talking about how do we add increased density and infill where we already have existing services, which decreases the strain on trying to develop farmland. So that's the big one. It could be a philosophical change. I think every change we make to our zoning ordinance should be philosophical. But that's the big thing. And then there is, I don't know why we have he mentions the Bridgeport plan, because this has nothing to do with the Bridgeport plan. This is in the commercial 2, commercial 3 zoning district out on Lincoln Highway. So that's the big one, is how do we get some of those in there? Or the other issues that I brought up in the past, similar to this, but I remember you had asked, I think it was about a year and a half ago now, Corey, because I had 2 issues. One was a commercial zoning amendment. The other one was home occupation by right. Another recommended change to our zoning ordinance by the LIMC plan, as well as our Conestoga Valley Comprehensive Plan. And it was, which one should we do first? And at the time I said we could go ahead and do the home occupation one. But again, nothing has happened on that one either. So that's really my question to the board is, if there's something we would like to see changed that is in line with these other planning documents, what is the process that the board has to initiate one of those? We've had good amendments come through when the property owners initiate. Rockvale will be an example of that, High Associates with the business park zone. But I think we do need to have a better process where we can start to put some of these items in and at least see what a general draft would look like, which would give us better feedback to say we like it or we don't like it, without going through a full rewrite before we see what that final option is.
Do you want to talk about the home office and instead of the commercial too? Or I guess my question is, well, let me sort of throw my thoughts out there first before I ask a question. So it sounds like you're talking about 2 things. You're talking about providing staff with what I would call guiding principles of how the board could direct staff to push the township in a certain direction, right? So an example would be providing additional uses that support the workforce. So having childcare, medical, laundry, right? Your first point, right? That'd be an example of that. You also then have, process steps, which I think have some legal concern, right? Is the legal concern more on the process or on the guiding principles?
I would say more so on the process.
Okay. So what I would suggest is, like, let's try to get some agreement on just the objectives first. And you brought up 2 different things. You brought up C2, C3, and then also you brought up the home occupation thing. I think the home occupation thing is frankly easier, but because many of us working from home are probably, out of compliance, right?
If we're meeting a client at all, yes.
Yeah, well, I'm not out of compliance then.
Yeah,
personally.
The other one too is, I'm just looking at historically, there's been a couple big zoning changes that I've been spearheading that we moved through. One of those, we've had some bigger ones. We passed property maintenance code. That wasn't in the zoning, but it's now referenced more. But we did accessory apartments by right, which impacted almost every single zoning district. And that was a technical amendment that we ran through. It's also very philosophical in the approach to say people can utilize their own property to generate revenue and rent out a room to their neighbor. So some of those go through, and staff was helpful in working through and drafting that and getting feedback. But again, that was one that just passed through a normal yearly technical amendment process. So the question is, but since then, the last couple ones that I've tried to push through that we've had discussions on seem to be going nowhere. So the question is, do we need some better set of guiding principles that the staff need? Anything else that we're not providing?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go back up maybe a little bit higher, Corey, to 30,000 feet. Ralph, I appreciate your memo. I think it helped me to understand staff's thinking, but also staff's workload, staff's efforts to prioritize what the board's been asking of staff. Helped me to understand staff's thinking about the current processes we have for addressing community needs, community concerns, and priorities. So I appreciate that effort. Overall, what I'm reading from Ethan's efforts here, and efforts, leading up to this, as he's been referencing, is, Ethan is, looking at some new and innovative, but also some tried and true ideas and concepts and community planning and how that can be driven by your zoning, or can be prohibited by your zoning. So I appreciate all of that. I've told Ethan that, both privately and also here. I always appreciate his energy towards seeking, innovation and bringing in some new ideas and hard thinking on things. Dan McEwen just referenced, he said he believes East Lampeter Township is one of the most progressive townships in the county. And I think he's, making that statement because he's been involved in planning for 12 years or something. And he's probably been involved in other, things around the community too. I would say that, progressive, innovative, creative, can be challenging concepts in local government. We have resources that we have to put in place. We have time. We have, limited time, limited resources. We have to respond to things, based upon what we have. If we're not doing something, that allows for creative, innovative ideas to come to the fore, then we should look at that. How are we behaving? How are we acting? Ethan has been able to bring up, I think, a lot of very interesting and creative ideas, to the board, and the public body votes or gives direction to staff, and staff then takes the limited resources it has and goes out there and goes to work, trying to respond to that. I don't recall us all sitting around, these meetings, rebuffing, some of those ideas coming up. I just don't believe that we've walked away saying, in the 9-10 years that I've been on the board, hey, listen, staff, you need to put aside these other things to get to this. I think we've been trying to help staff to understand, how do you want us to prioritize these things? I think also, Ralph, the effort you went to describe to us, to reiterate to all of us here, because I think we all are well aware of how local government works. There's a process by which the state has driven local governments to behave and to act, and that process has implications. It has to be driven by a plan, a comprehensive plan. Has to be, in our case, tied into a regional plan. I'm disappointed to hear you use the word disappointment, that there are some municipalities within the LAMC who are breaking away and going their own way. I didn't understand that.
There are a number doing their own comp plans. Yeah.
Well, that absolutely goes against 25 years of my involvement in this community. I mean, in the early 90s, we meaning lots of groups, spent a lot of energy trying to get the municipal governing bodies in this community to recognize that they're part of, they're tied to, they're intimately connected to. You don't leave Bridgeport and drive into West Lampeter or Manhattan Township or Lancaster City or Lancaster Township and stop and show your passport. We're all interconnected, which I think Ethan is a big proponent of, a big sponsor. I welcome Ethan's approach to that. But I do think that, we have been trying to focus on this, comprehensive growth planning, visioning. That's tied into what's going on in our neighbors and of course the whole county. If there are some innovative ideas, they're not making their way to the fore, then, Ethan's got some thoughts on that. And I think that's, it's great to hear those innovative ideas. However, they do need to be tied into the larger plan, the larger, comprehensive plan, and kind of just, 2040 just got adopted. So we've got to keep, focused on that. Below that is just, a question of resources. I'm more than willing to give staff direction. I don't know if we do it through a resolution. We need to just let staff know, hey, we think there are some things that are well worth bringing up and filtering through good comprehensive planning, good land use planning, good zoning, ordinance evaluation. See what other BMPs are happening around the country, around the state, around the county. And if those need to be, then staff should bring them to our attention, and we can say that helps us. But if this board representing the taxpayers need to send a message to staff, then we can do that. I read, Ethan, your document that you sent. I appreciate the time and effort. I just read it and I was thinking to myself, before your memo, I thought, seems like we're trying to say to staff in a public way, you're not doing your job. Maybe that wasn't the intention, Ethan, and I don't mean to accuse, but as I read it, that's what jumped out. And I thought, Ethan's saying, staff, you're not doing your job. And I'm thinking to
I think he's
myself,
frustrated, and Ethan and I talked about this on Friday. He's frustrated with the time that has passed between when these things have first been brought up and now. He's definitely frustrated. by that.
Okay.
And
So
I can't-
that came through.
Yeah,
That came through.
and yes, staff would be the other end of that frustration.
Okay. All right. So I did read that, Corey.
Yeah,
I did read, and that's what I thought. I thought, Ethan, you're really saying, hey, in a public way, staff, you're not doing your job. And I stopped to think about the Sunday afternoon. I thought, okay, let me be fair and really read this as it's being written and the words Ethan's using here. And I thought, okay, is there a division on staff that we're unaware of? Are planning and zoning not lined up with the manager? Are staff in general not lined up with what the board's been saying? Where are we missing? Something's missing, something's not jiving here. Or one member of the board is not feeling that he's getting responded to, heard, either by staff or by the other members of the board, one of the two. So I think it's right and good that we have the conversation. Say, okay, something's askew here. And then I read your memo, and I thought, yeah, that's all the stuff that I recall going on. We've got a oncoming member of the community who's going to be coming on the board here, and over the past 8 to 10 months or so, I've been having some conversations with Mike about the big rocks and the little rocks and everything else. And everything else is almost hard to get to because the big rocks and medium-sized rocks are just filling up so much, which I think comes back to maybe a question of, is this board sending the message that we want to be sent to staff, or is this board, through taxpayer resources, are we funding enough staff, enough resources to get some of these things done? Are we looking at that? Are we doing something that is insufficient to achieve some of the ends that an elected member of the board is saying, hey, I represent community members and I don't think things are happening. So I'm saying a lot, and I apologize, but I thought I needed to get some of that out.
Yeah. I mean, my thought is that we should have a conversation about these 5 bullet points that Ethan has put on this document to see where we, as a board, believe we should, can we get agreement on 2 of these 5 on all 5. And that will then say, let's just say it's all 5 that we want the board to move on. Then we need to look at, do we have enough staffing and prioritization of the 10 or 12 items that have to put on his response to determine if we need help to get those things done. My sense is if we start discussing these 5, we may agree on a few of those. And I think that would be a helpful first step. So I'm gonna start with the first one, okay? And let's have a conversation about it. So the first one is provide for additional, and before I start, Ethan, are there any other than these 5, or is it really just these 5 points?
The whole spreadsheet that I had sent before that we
Okay.
had started going through.
Yeah.
that
But
was
these
just
are
the
guiding.
first- It's the workforce support uses.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one is really a lot about the workforce, right? So providing additional uses that support the workforce that's employed in our commercial zones. So childcare, medical, laundry. So you're saying there are people that work in and around the commercial zones, and are there services, businesses that should be allowed in those commercial zones to provide services to those workforce?
We're talking now about C2 and C3, which would be these areas here, correct?
Right. Yeah.
What's pink, basically. Yeah.
And just not
Please go.
to be nitpicky, but
Yeah.
C2 and C3 isn't mentioned anywhere in this document. It's commercial.
Right.
I went through in much greater detail when I met with Tara and Colin. We walked through specifically those, but I was trying to not be very explicit in dictating exactly what I want. I wanted to give a degree of latitude and flexibility to staff. But when I met with staff, I was very specific about here's what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I was not in that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Corey,
Yeah,
before
please,
before
go.
you dive into
Yeah.
a little more granular, I guess I want to stay up at just a little bit higher if I can, just a little longer. And the question comes back to, what are we as a body here asking of our taxpayer resources? Because there's a boatload of stuff that we're asking them to do right now. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves. And I think Ethan, as a private sector manager, I think you would also be saying the same thing. Hey, we got to prioritize the use of
Sure.
resources, and
Yeah.
resources is time, money, personnel. So, rather than basically volunteer members of the community trying to dive in and become experts on all of these things, we do hire staff to who are experts to try and do these things and help to distill these concepts and these issues for us as members of the community. I cannot sit here and say that I'm ready to, make recommendations on more granular specifics of, the BMPs or progressive, concepts in zoning and planning. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I've been involved in this for 30 years. I have to say, if Ethan's having conversations with Tara and her staff on these things, I'm trusting that Tara and her staff are saying to, the CEO, hey, here's what we can deliver upon. Here's what we can't deliver upon. Based upon expectations that you've set for us, resources you've given us, here's what we can deliver upon. Here's what we can't. And it's not my expectation that staff then says to the board, hey, we're not going to do certain things. It has to be, hey, based upon what you are asking us to do, board, here's what we can deliver upon. If you give us more resources,
Right.
or if you decrease your expectations, we can deliver upon things. But I think what I'm hearing from Ethan is, hey, for a number of years, as a member of this body, I've been trying to set expectations of things that I believe we need to do and staff needs to deliver upon. And I'm hearing back over the past couple of days from staff, what I don't think is what Ethan's wanting to hear. I think what Ethan is saying is that's not sufficient for me. I think we should be addressing these things.
All I really want to hear is when can we start to look at what would a draft look like? Because there is some nuance in here, but a lot of this is, these are existing uses already defined in our zoning ordinance. There's nothing progressive or innovative about adding back in a convenience store to the C3 or making it legal to build a grocery store or build a house. These are all things that we've had in these zones in the past, some of them in the more recent past. And yeah, the concept is we should add them back in. And if there's concerns about how they're added in, the staff can put in the appropriate items or conditions to make it so they're going correctly.
When did we decide that we want to add this stuff back into this district? Who decided that?
That's the conversation we've
discussion.
had. Well, we had it,
We've had some brief discussions.
right.
We never
But the
decided
big
we
one,
wanted
what
to.
we did decide when we added the overlay to Rockdale.
Well, that's one specific site.
Right.
We're talking about the whole,
Right.
this whole district. And I think before we even think about making changes, we have to talk to some big shareholders. If I just spent 180 grand, 180 million building a motel on that site because of restricted zoning, I'm going to be upset if they're going to say, well, now you can build a daycare center next door. I mean, we have that zone restricted for a purpose. With all these things that you're saying here as extra amenities that are available next door in the other zones. So why should we change this specific zone for all this extra stuff when we never decided that's the direction we want to go? But I remember.
Because these add more uses to the property owners, which would increase their economic activity. That's the big one. So,
I think
and I don't,
we start bringing in other stuff and then the big players won't be wanting to come in.
I think, if I can.
Yes, please, go
So staying up at 30,000 feet again, I come back to this issue. And it is, and Glenn just brought it up, and that is, there's a process that we have to go through to ensure that the community understands what we're trying to do. Our neighbors trying to understand what we're trying to do. And when I say community, I mean taxpayers and businesses. Neo-traditional design concepts, to me, have a lot of great potential. And I'm excited about those NTDs. I'm excited about mixed use. But we do have to follow a process. We have to speak to the community and say, hey, here are some things that we're finding that are great BMPs. Some, Ethan, are concepts that were out there 5 years ago to 50 years ago. And we want to bring those back in. We want to reintroduce these things. But Glenn's point is, I'll use one example. We've got a 5-acre parcel in our ag zone just east of 896 that we are working very creatively with a business owner to locate their business in this place. Some other business owners bought that property and owned it for some time, and we didn't work creatively with them to do that. There's a process we have to go through to ensure that voices are heard. People are given a chance to present their ideas or to counter some proposals we're putting out there. And are we as a body, elective body, taking Ethan's idea of changing a process for making some adjustments? Are we saying to staff, hey, you need to prioritize this and you need to start coming back to us with these ideas of process and also allowances? I think we have to be able to either say we do that or we don't do it, because staff does need direction from us.
and just to add, I think that direction should be in public.
And I think that's what at least is asking for.
And that's all I'm asking for, is that we should be giving staff that direction in a public forum. So if Ethan has brought forward a few points, let's have discussion about those few points to at least give the board or give staff direction. I get that there's a process, and I think what Hutch put together is great, and what the solicitor put together is helpful. But I don't know if it's this amount of work or a very small amount of work, because we haven't completely given the board or the staff direction.
Well, I think Ethan would say we have. He just repeated
True.
for quite some time. He has
Right.
been giving that, if I could reference as a spreadsheet.
Sure.
So I would say that out of frustration, Ethan has said, okay, I'm speaking for Ethan. I apologize. I'm giving what I'm understanding. And I think my understanding is not what's in your head, but it's just what I'm interpreting, what I'm seeing. What I'm reading is Ethan is saying here is, okay, I'm going to
Right.
pull out a couple things that I believe I'd like to see get pushed ahead.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interpreting this to be.
No, the spreadsheet clearly was at, individual use level, right? It was the uses on the left-hand side and the, the different zoning districts across the top. I don't think we need to get to that level at this meeting. I do think we need to get to a level of guiding principles. Do we want more housing in, commercial 2, commercial 3? That's something that should be discussed in public. That should be discussed at a board of supervisors meeting.
Yeah, yes, but once again, that's one. Ethan's spreadsheet was a lot more.
Yeah, but
So what staff is saying to us,
Right.
and I think this is my point of process, Corey.
Yeah.
What staff is saying to us is,
we got a lot of stuff going on.
well, no, what staff is saying is the process for handling all these kinds of
Yeah.
ideas is the comprehensive planning process driven by the MPC.
Understood.
And so, there are a lot of dominoes that have to fall.
Correct.
And
Dominoes
while
and in order.
While do you guys want us as
Yeah.
staff, do you want us
Yeah.
to turn around and find resources to address
Right.
all those dominoes? Or do you want us to already keep working on the things that have already started falling in place?
Right. Yeah, so I totally agree. My point is, if we can't agree on guiding principles, let's just say we only agree to one thing, that's a much smaller job. I realize you have to go through all those different steps that Hutch wrote, but maybe we can't agree on anything, so we don't even go down that path.
And the other, everything that's going on Route 30 right now with the things we're trying to do, to throw this on top of it yet is extremely bad timing, in my opinion.
Ralph and Tara, is our comprehensive growth plan and our zoning ordinance driven by best practices in community design, land use planning, affordable housing, mixed use? Is it driven by that?
Well, as good as we are, I can't say that we're up on top of every possible thing that's out there.
Okay.
So there's always room for new knowledge.
Okay.
But I think we've done pretty well with the board's guidance.
Okay. And are the suggestions that have come forward by Ethan over the past number of years, are those suggestions things that you're telling us that those are captured in our comprehensive growth plan and in our zoning ordinance already? Or you haven't heard from this body that we're looking for you to go out there and to weigh those and measure them against best practices and put them in? Is there something that we're missing as an elected body?
I'm not sure I understand your question. But
If a member of this board says, hey, I think we should have, far more housing along Lincoln Highway than what we do, and it should be at workforce levels, at affordable levels. It should be driven by the market, and it should be allowed to be multifamily, multi-story. Are those concepts captured in our comprehensive plan, in our zoning ordinance, or are they rebuffed in our comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance because of other reasons?
Well, I would say related to the C3 zone in particular, residential is not contemplated in the comp plan as part of that area.
Those ideas are definitely in mixed use in the village areas, Bird in Hand, Whitmer, Ronks, Soudersburg. Absolutely, those concepts are in there. And that's when the comprehensive overhaul of the zoning ordinance took place in 2016. We held a series of workshops prior to adopting that to go through the changes that were proposed because they were fairly sweeping from the 1990 ordinance.
Right.
And the board said, move forward with design guidelines for Bird in Hand because that's what the Conestoga Valley Regional Comprehensive Plan suggested, that there be design guidelines. And we said, okay, Bird in Hand will be our first. That'll be our test case. We expanded the mixed use area, zoning area, and expanded the uses allowed. We allowed not only mixed use within a building, but mixed use on a property. We expanded the heights in every zoning district. We reduced the lot requirements on frontage. We actually made a minimum and maximum in some of the village areas so that you were building closer to the roadway, not putting parking in front of a building, putting it behind. So we took a lot of the concepts that are in the comprehensive plans, both the CV region and the Growing Together LAMC plan, and made those come to fruition in the zoning update. And then that zoning update has seen technical changes, and we have taken, some of Ethan's suggestions, like he mentioned, the accessory dwelling unit. We looked at that significantly a few years ago, made that change to all single families in the township. And a lot of people have taken advantage of that. Where they run into problems with that is with our saldo. Because our saldo is still from 1986. Our saldo has not been brought up to date to keep us in line with the zoning changes that we've made.
Which,
Is a higher priority.
according to Ralph's
Yeah.
presentation,
Number two.
somewhere here,
Yeah.
is
High on the
slated
list.
to be queued up and adopted here and worked on. So, as somebody who has to answer to the taxpayers, I have asked you to do what you just did, what you just said. I'm not hearing from members of the community who are saying that they're disappointed in those things that you just outlined. Comprehensive plan, 2016 update, zoning ordinance amendments, technical, updates continuing. I'm not hearing from that. I'm not hearing from people, but maybe they're out there, and I'm missing those individuals. I want to be assured that as a member of the board, if there are items that are coming from the members of the board, and we can agree that there's something we want to change, that you dedicate time and effort to it, and then it comes back to us, and we go to adopt it. So if there are some things, Corey, that are in Ethan's ideas here, then staff come back to us with responses to some of these items. But I want to follow the process. I just do not believe that we ought to be reinventing a process that is not backed up by our solicitor who's saying this is an appropriate way to do this, or by the community who says wait a second, I just built a business over here. You told me that these things were going on, that I could do this based upon your plan and your zoning, and now you're telling me that's not the case. We're going to get ourselves into trouble if we do that.
I think everyone on the board will agree, we need to follow the correct legal process to do it. But we need to provide staff with some direction know if we need to follow a process or not. That's the, so, so Ethan,
What do you think you need then?
To do what?
I don't want to go off of Corey's point there. I mean, so. Do you feel?
I can, if you like, I can, these 5 bullet points, I can just respond to.
I think that'd be
Uh,
great. And I would love to hear the board's comments on any of them.
Do you want me to do that now?
Please, go for it. We, you know, if you can keep it to 15 minutes, let's.
Okay. Yeah, I interpreted that bullet point, as encompassing all commercial areas. So C1, C2, C3, mixed uses, business park, villages, as this was everywhere. So we have childcare, medical, laundry provided for throughout most of the zones.
Ethan, you have it on here. You don't believe so?
No, C2, C3 are the ones, it's ones of expanding back out. It's, yeah, in the business park, we have all those uses. We have housing, we have commercial, we have, because people who work in the business park like to have daycare. I just think people who ride a bus should also have that option.
So I don't know how, maybe Glenn and Dave recall the 1990 ordinance, because I don't think you all truly worked with it for very long of a period of time. But that ordinance in the C1 had these types of uses along with others. And then all of the C1 uses transferred to the C2. And then every use in C2 transferred to C3. So
We didn't have C3.
oh, that's right.
Then.
There was no C3. It was C2.
That was it. It was just
Right.
C1 and C2.
So C1 and C2. And so,
And in the comp plan, that's the regional commercial zone as referenced in the comp plan.
and so as
C3.
part of the overhaul of the zoning ordinance and the workshops that we had prior to that overhaul, we went through the changes that we were going to divide these uses, that we were going to limit the uses along the C3 to tourist geared uses, C2 and C1, as well as mixed use would be locally serving in nature and expand as you came out the corridor to the C3 tourist destination area.
Yeah, so for a little bit of context, when I joined the board and Corey joined the board, we were 99% of the way through the new zoning ordinance. And we sat through several meetings to get caught up to speed because everyone else was already up to speed. The idea was, all right, let's pass it. We have an amendment process. We can make changes as we go forward. Because I do believe that the 2016 zoning ordinance was a significant improvement over the 1990 ordinance. And every time we've made amendments, we've improved on that ordinance, whether it's the BP, and multiple expansions there. So we've continually tweaked it. I just want to make sure we have that process going forward, because that's probably the one thing that I would say I like the way that East St. Peter operated since the 1990s was in that commercial zone. So from 1990 to 2016, I don't think we were doing anything wrong along the corridor. Starting in 2016, I agree with Glenn that we introduced some exclusionary zoning elements. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. I wasn't at all of the meetings leading up to that. So that's the discussion really is those changes that were made specifically in the C2, C3, or what was the old C2. Whether we want to go back to the way things were for the last 50 years in that region, or add some of the backward conditions that might make more sense to align better with the other parts of the zoning ordinance.
My understanding, and I was on the County Planning Commission 97, 98, 99, 2000. My understanding in the late 90s was that the county was looking for a full comprehensive plan that would tap into all the municipalities' comprehensive plans, eventually birthing regional plans. And during that process, the county and all the stakeholders said, hey, you know, the visitor economy in Lancaster County is very important. And East Lampeter, my word's not there, East Lampeter is Main Street when it comes to that. And so therefore, wow, that requires some pretty intensive development, heights, multiple hotels, restaurants that support the hotels, street lighting. I mean, that's street lights in the mid-90s on Lincoln Highway. People used to cross there and I guess still get hit. But there were a couple of deaths along there. We got PennDOT to agree to help start putting in street lighting, and then eventually we invested in sidewalks and curbs. It took many years to get that going, but that was in line with the county's comprehensive plan and all stakeholders that were saying a visitor economy is an important thing. Therefore, just like agriculture, we need to create the economies of scale and those amenities that support agriculture for visitors. And that's why, we have been very tough, I think, on some uses that were coming in. And as of late, maybe because of the 2016 updates, there have been some businesses that have gotten in that might not have gotten in as we envisioned in the late 90s as a visitor Main Street. And there are some uses that are coming in. I don't recall that we were doing something to
they were-
we were driven by that vision, I guess.
Yeah, there was a series of planning efforts that were going on at the same time. One of them was the county's development of the county tourism plan, which locally basically said that the Lincoln Highway corridor needed to be addressed and needed to be looked at carefully. So there was a follow-up plan to that we did locally that was called the Gateway Plan, I think. And that was sort of in that same time frame, but as a sequence in planning efforts, along with our comp plan, and then finally, which took very, very, very too much time to get to the 2016 adoption. But all of those sort of supported, all of that decision making was supported by the planning that had gone on through the county tourism plan, the Gateway Plan, the Highway Streetscape Plan, which was the final product in that series. And while we were talking about the regional plans, that corridor was, hey, that's our tourism. We need to provide for regionally significant property uses in that corridor. In addition to tourist things, there was, Walmart, nobody else in the CV district wanted to have a Walmart. So where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put it out there? So that part of the zoning was related to that discussion as well. So yeah, it's been over many years, right?
Multiple different
Developed
plans.
through various planning efforts.
So, back to Ethan's comment, or point here, is that zoning district out there? Is it from 2016 to now? Are we rethinking it? Does it need to be rethought? Are these uses that Ethan is asking for?
Well, specifically to Ethan's point, somebody riding the bus can drop their child off for childcare in what is now the mixed use zone before they continue riding the bus out to the C3 zone.
Must have come in the other direction.
So you want them in, so then you want to put it in the village in Soudersburg. So I didn't look at the village. I don't know whether, daycare's provided in the village. It probably is.
I'm saying we provide all these amenities for workers in the business park. It makes sense. I just think it also makes sense to do it in secret. But also, and this was all of the concerns that Rockville brought to us. And one of the, Rockville still hasn't come forward with a full plan. And one of those challenges is, and part of why I'm advocating for this is we shouldn't be relying on the big boys to do all of our development out there. I'd rather have 100 small local developers take one parcel at a time, fix it up and try something new than to rely on one ginormous corporation to come in and do it. The result of the big boys developing out there is reducing the amount of revenue from property taxes so we have to raise property taxes on all the small homeowners in the township. Rockville has sued for reassessment. It's gone through, and that's been a significant revenue hit. So I don't think we should be designing our zoning to rely on big developers.
All the planning that has led up to this point for that particular area has said that's where the regional, the big stuff should be. That's why the zoning ordinance reads the way it does for this reason.
So it gets back to the plans, right? It gets back to the comprehensive plans, it gets back to the regional plans that you said that should be regional. It gets back, you have to relook at those plans. Now, on the list, you have, we're not going to get through this. We're going to table this at some point because this poor gentleman is waiting to speak about Chantel. But Hutch, on your document, I'm sorry, where is it? You have technical amendments that are going to come through in 2022, right? From Tara and Tara's team.
Well, from Colin.
From Colin, I'm sorry. Updating the saldo, which we know we need to do. Update the official map. I guess my question to this board is, without Hutch going through each and every one of these, is there a way that we can provide some guidance on what should happen in C1 through C3? I'm adding C1 in there. I know you just said C2 and C3, but in the commercial district, can we have a discussion specifically about the commercial district, maybe at a separate meeting, public meeting, where we just discuss, and maybe we go through an Excel document. I don't know. I feel like we have to give staff some direction, or we're just not going to do anything, or we're just going to wait for a developer to come to, say they need X, Y, or Z, and we either do it or don't. But I think we have to look at it.
Let me provide my answer to this. I think you're spot on. We do have to give staff direction. We cannot be staff. That's what we're paying them to do.
Correct.
So from me, the direction has to be, what does this community want? This community wants what it has presented through the comprehensive planning process. And we have to stick with that. We can't change it on them. Now, if we need to say to staff, hey, based upon the comprehensive plan, we need to see some ideas in 2022 that, provide for housing to meet the growing needs of the businesses in East Lampeter Township. We need to see use conditions and uses to incentivize smaller parcel and infill redevelopment. And if staff isn't bringing that to us, we need to say, staff, why aren't you bringing this to us? Staff has to say, we don't have the resources.
Right.
We don't understand, whatever. That, I think we have to say, we have a comprehensive growth plan. That comprehensive growth plan captured the vision of this community. It's our community strategic plan. And so if staff can come back to us to say, hey, here are these couple of things that a member of the board was looking for. Here's where we have it, or here's where we don't have it. Here's what we can do to get it there.
What's the year of the CD regional comp plan?
2003.
And hopefully, after doing the rec plan, that would be a follow-up to update that plan.
We've updated or reviewed that plan as recently as last year.
Yeah, so that was, it was written in 2003, but we get, hey, here are recommended changes to it.
So.
And I don't know,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, go.
I don't know if this helps or not, but my suggestion, I guess, would be that, if the board wants, for example, the commercial zones to be reviewed, that you ask your planning commission
Mhm.
to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if at their public meetings,
Mhm.
there are individual citizens,
Yeah.
whether they're elected or
Yeah.
otherwise,
Yeah.
who want to have that discussion with your planning commission.
Yeah.
And the planning commission wants to make recommendations back to the board of supervisors for, hey, we ought to pursue A, B, and C. Then we can enter that into
Yeah.
the process of moving towards amending the ordinance.
Okay. Like that? Ethan, will you attend the planning commission meeting as a elected official or as a citizen or both?
I mean, the big one too would be even to know or have some idea from staff of, is this a large amount of work or a little bit of work?
Yeah.
If we did it, would it be number 9 on the prioritized list of 8 things? Some sort of feedback or what it would take to create a draft of what that would look like. Because even at a planning commission, you're going to run into the same issue of there's a lot of questions that people are going to have that are granular questions, that there needs to be some response of, well, this is how this would be handled.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a fully
Yeah.
drafted zoning
Okay.
ordinance. So that's the
Okay.
piece that even
That makes
this
sense.
board can't give accurate feedback on until we get some sort of
Yeah,
working draft.
so in terms of responding to those 5 things, I'll do that outside of the rest of this meeting.
Yeah.
um,
That sounds great.
For the board members, and then you can decide what you want to do next.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then if there's some
That's the plan.
response there, then it would be fantastic to have the planning commission look at.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we had a discussion. I'm gonna move on.
Okay.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, John, for your summation and managing that. Yeah, 30,000 foot. Love it. Okay, 10A, Mr. Kurt Costco. Wow. Hopefully you're getting paid by the hour. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can. It's all you, Chantel. Tell us. Yeah, just maybe just hold the microphone. That's
So Chris Kyle is also on tonight as our VP of Government and Community Affairs. So we're here this evening requesting a franchise agreement. Statute of Township. Chantel to moderate a system. Talking with Mr. Hutchinson for a while now. And ironed out the agreement, pretty much answered the questions that I think we needed to. I'm here tonight to answer any additional questions. And we're very excited to be here tonight. Looking forward to get this project going. So,
yeah. I mean, one question would be just what's the timeline? Like I realize like the last mile, right? Like how do you?
so our
Does that
timeline
work?
right now would be once the franchise agreement is signed.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, we'd like to have a meeting with the township zoning permitting group, kind of get an idea of what their processes are. And our engineering folks will start work pretty much right after this is signed. There's a lot of work to do with utility companies. Bottom line is it's about 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
when we start construction.
Okay.
And then probably it'll take about a year once we start.
And when I say last mile, you wire, let's just say you get through that 18 to 24 month process. A person over here signs up, a person over here signs up, you're wiring to those homes or?
Yes, it's a fiber to the home system.
Okay.
So we would come in and we would build a fiber network throughout the entire community.
Okay.
And then any customers that are service.
Yeah.
We would actually put a fiber optic drop into the home.
Okay. Okay.
Just, yeah, and I appreciate what Kurt said, as far as the entire community. They're not going to serve every house in the community.
Yeah, I was-
Out there.
Yeah.
They're going to build it out, probably similar to what's built out now for Comcast.
Right.
And I hope I'm being fair in that way. I don't want to discount your efforts because they're great and we're excited about having the competition. But
That was sort of my question.
not every house is going to be
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Other questions?
Bring it on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited. I saw, I've been watching all the other municipalities have you and your colleagues at the meetings. So I'm happy to actually finally have you here. Sorry you had to wait through an entire meeting.
That's what I do. So it's all good.
Okay, that's great. Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ethan, second by John. Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the public? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Franchise agreement passes. Thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
We'll get you signed copies.
Yeah, great job, Chris. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bruce is smiling.
He
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
He's
great job.
been playing solitaire on his computer the whole time. We know that.
you go. Kurt does the hard work.
Yeah, there you go.
Look forward to working.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
great.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, guys. Love the competition.
Okay, we have 10B on the agenda. We have authorized chipper sale to Conestoga Township. Sounds like we have an old chipper. Conestoga Township found out that we were potentially going to buy a new one and offered us the trading value of $17,000. Anything to add there?
I think it's a good deal. We should take it.
Okay, great.
Chipper off the old block, huh?
Okay, so
Make a motion, we authorize sale of chipper over 17,000.
Ethan made the motion, Glenn made the second. Any other comments about the chipper? No public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the chipper is sold. Next, we have authorization to advertise the 2022 budget for public inspection.
Yes, this is a part of your annual process toward adopting a budget for the coming year. We had a workshop meeting with the board in October. Following that meeting, staff made a variety of modifications to the draft budget, which I tried to identify and summarize in the budget narrative that was provided. Many of those changes resulted in increases to estimates for revenue into the general fund. A number of them had to do with changes to expenditures to reduce expenditures. And so the bottom line there is that the draft budget does still contemplate a deficit spend of about $340,000 in the general fund. We do have a very healthy general fund balance on hand,
38.
significantly more than the board's policy on
Yep.
maintaining. And so I'm recommending that the current real estate millage rate be retained and would be the same as it has been. This would be the fourth year at the same rate. 2022 would be the fourth year at the same rate. And so the next part of the process would be to open the budget up for public inspection and review. And the second meeting in December, which is December the 20th, would be where the board would consider adoption of the budget.
Okay. Questions for Hutch?
Is it possible to get an itemized list of the changes? I mean, you provided
sure.
the PDF, but it's very helpful if I can get 200 pages in a spreadsheet.
Oh, I thought he sent you a spreadsheet.
No, not for any of the proposed changes.
Okay. Yeah, we
Because the
can-
big one in there is looking at where we're anticipating they did see, it looked like a cut again in the fire apparatus replacement fund. It also looks like a cut in the OPEB fund. And when are we planning to make those up?
Right. OPEB, we wanted to get into the idea of setting up the trust, getting the investments going there to try and improve the return on those dollars. We looked at, and I'll get you this, I'm sorry it wasn't shared before. We looked at what was coming in the next few years as far as possible retirements that would be potentially using that. We don't have really many. So we felt that the balance that's there is pretty good at this point, over $2 million. So the other aspect of that, which really applies to both, and I think less so the OPEB, we still don't have full guidance from what we can use the ARPA funds for. I suspect that we will not recommend using them for the OPEB dollars. But for the fire apparatus, I think there's a good possibility that we can use dollars to go toward that. The other concept that I wanted to share related to the fire apparatus is the alternative of borrowing dollars at the time of those fire apparatus purchases rather than putting dollars away in advance. And the thinking there, at least the way I look at it, is that in that way, the people who are actually using that piece of equipment are the ones who are paying for it, rather than people who might not be in the community anymore at all. So we'd still finance whatever the township's portion of those apparatus purchases are, but we do it through borrowing rather than socking money away.
Bond rates stay as low as they have been. It sounds.
I mean, that's
great.
going to fluctuate over time.
Yeah, they're just, they're historically low, have been low for such a long period of time. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, go, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Yeah,
So
go.
for taxpayer understanding, so the general fund is got a fund balance of about, at the end of 2022, which you're projecting as 37%.
Yes.
Going into the year, it's at 46 something.
Yeah, almost 39%.
So, we committed to a fund balance policy of about 18%, no less than
18% of expenditures, correct?
18%. So those general fund dollars that are sitting there are taxpayer dollars.
Absolutely.
That, current taxpayers have paid in their taxes, and now that's sitting there. And it's going to sit there for a lot of years in the future, at least 4 or 5 years in the future.
Yeah, depending on future budgets, but overspending our revenues by about 340,000 is not going to create a problem in the general fund.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if somebody says to me, hey, you're into deficit spending in your municipality, right? Well, on technical, point, sure. But I'm sitting on,
Right.
a couple $1 million of your taxes that I'm utilizing those to cover services and expenditures that you have.
Right. I mean, we're, in prior years, we had more revenue than we had expenditures. That's how this fund balance was created. So, we're not a profit motivated enterprise. We'd like to hit zero every time, but that's not realistic. You do need to have some balance because, at the beginning of the year, we don't have revenue coming in. We need to pay our bills. We're in a good place at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure.
Can we take any of the, if we're running a surplus as we roll into the end of the year, in this year, can we put, since we're doing fund-based accounting, can we make any payments into those funds this year? In other words, it's one of, if you're running a surplus, we should utilize, we shouldn't be parking that much money in a general fund. we have capital reserve and all these other funds that we're paying into. And the other option would be to address those at the end of the year, fill up some of those funds, and then actually run a balanced budget into the next year.
Well, you're still gonna have, I mean, absolutely, you can transfer dollars between funds. There's still, for lack of a better term, parked somewhere. But you're still gonna have a deficit spend appearance. You're still gonna have, when you just measure anticipated revenues against the anticipated expenditures, you're still gonna have that
340.
same number.
Yeah.
Whether you transfer, the only thing that's going to change is that fund balance amount and the percent of expenditures that you have as a balance.
So why are you saying, like, what's the benefit of moving it to, say, the capital reserve fund?
I mean, we have budgeted moves, so it would change the expenditure number for 2022. So in other words, if you're going to put $100,000 in your overhead fund in January, you put it in December because we're running a surplus.
Oh, you mean in the prior year? Got it. So in this budget, in the current year's budget.
I mean, it's a way to look at budgeting where if you're a public entity or a nonprofit, this is where you say, all right, we budgeted this much for our operating. And then we've got these other things which we're making investments on. We could go and borrow money, increase our operating costs, or we can start putting away excess cash into these funds now for an anticipated thing we're budgeting for, whether it's capital reserves, OPEB, or fire apparatus, or the big three that we're talking about here. You take your excess, if you do have a better year than you were expecting, do that, and then you try to start each year with a balanced budget.
Yeah, if you change the anticipated in the following year, yes, what Ethan's saying is correct. I was assuming that it still won't change.
Well, you could say it's two or one, half of it is the other, but one is we are governed by the statute. It's how you interpret the second class township code of our objective is to pass balanced budgets. And that's what our job is.
It is balanced. It's balanced by use
By
of fund
capital
balance.
reserves.
But,
No, not by
By-
capital
by-
reserves.
by,
The general fund balance is at
balance.
36.
Yes.
Each of your
Yeah.
funds
A general fund
have
balance.
certainly,
Yes.
dollars in them, and they're parked there and they're being planned for. They're parked there to be planned for future needs and purchases. But
But if
what
these are
Ethan-
ongoing expenses that we're going to have, and we have these same proposed revenues, it's only going to get worse the next year. And the next year, so it becomes one, we have to adjust it at some point. And we can either start adjusting it by not making as many budgeted expenditures into funds.
Yeah.
And only when there's a surplus moving into funds, or pay for those with debt. Or we need to look at how do we change the budget so that it makes it a balanced budget. So yeah, it may be perfectly fine this year, but
Right.
the next year is not so sure.
Ralph, why does Ethan and you see such a difference of this every year? I'm just going to put it out there. Every year we have the same conversation. Ethan debates Ralph on this, while we all sit here and go, the township's in great shape, let's go on.
We've
What's
been
the
trying to
debate?
balance
Yeah,
budgets for a while.
There's no right or wrong here. It's just a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
And, we as a board, I still have to look at the taxpayers and say, how are we doing? And every year I say the same thing. Township's in pretty darn good shape.
Yeah, I think that's a true statement.
Yeah, I
We're not,
Either, in
73
either case.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that.
75% of our general fund dollars come from real estate
I-
taxes, correct?
No, 20.
I
20
forget.
something.
No, sorry. I'm quoting wrong, but about 30% in your narrative, which you present here, as a homeowner, I'm saying, oh, wow, I'm being taxed. I'm paying into the township's coffers to run this government. And it's about 30% of those revenues.
Yeah, that's about it.
That's what your narrative presents to us, right?
So are you proposing we cut taxes?
That's a pretty good deal for a taxpayer.
Glenn, that's where I thought he was going, so.
It's a pretty good deal for a taxpayer. You could cut taxes
I'd-
once,
I'd
we're
love to do
sitting on,
that.
we got a general fund balance
We'd
of
make the
almost
headline.
37%. We got 46% in our general fund balance right now.
Yeah, regardless of which fund you put it in, we're still,
We're still sitting on a lot of money. It's a
Yeah.
township.
it
Yeah,
seems
but
like
we
that
also
would be a
got-
distinction.
Our
without a
pension
difference.
funds are almost, our
We
pension
cut the
funds.
here
are-
by delaying, well, not delaying, just cutting almost $600,000 to some of these funds, or almost $1 million of these funds over the last 2 years, and there's no plan to replace those cuts.
Well, no, the American Recovery Act, right? We have
Hopefully, we'll push those in, but
Yeah.
the OPEB fund, the fire apparatus fund, we just didn't make payments.
But the OPEB
Right.
fund has a clear ending. There was an act done to determine that and facts of.
So
who's your parent.
I come back to the debate we have every year. Why are you, as our staff that we're paying to do this, why are you giving us an irresponsible budget? We're not funding OPEB. Last year, Ethan is saying, you're not giving us a responsible budget.
Because if we
I
have
don't know that that's what he
these amount of
said.
reserves,
Okay.
we should be funding these funds. I mean, I don't think we
Yeah.
should be, we know we're gonna have to spend this money on fire apparatus. Let's go ahead and put it in the fund. And that was that was in the draft budget. No one in the room said we shouldn't do some of those things. It was more,
I
of,
think
hey,
that's fine.
I was looking at, we're getting $500,000 in ARPA funding. We already cut 600 from that fund the last 2 years. Now we've just added another 300,000. Now we're cutting $900,000. Are we going to refill $900,000 into that fund? I don't see a plan to do that.
No. Yeah, my suggestion is that when those purchases come up, that you borrow the funds for that rather than keeping more dollars in reserve.
Yeah, so, and that's where I would say we have a disagreement on that, unless there's a different plan, but it's one of, there's certain things that we've sort of started habitually kicking down the road, and that's been one of those items. And that's my concern, which I raised at the budget meeting, which is, if it's so easy for us to start kicking some of these things, then I think we need a dedicated source of funding to keep some guardrails on it. So.
I know you're trying to move on, Corey, but,
No,
but I
wanna-
look, I mean, Ethan raises this concern every year. And not only has he raised that concern, but, you know, we also come tonight and he's got a resolution to tell staff to do their job. Whether that's what he's saying or not, I'm saying that's what my interpretation is. As a fellow member of the board, I'm saying, well, we got a member of the board that's not agreeing with the way staff is running things. I'm going to call it out. That's what whether that's what Ethan is saying or not, that's my interpretation of where Ethan's
Because I
coming from.
didn't,
And I'm
when we had
saying,
the one budget workshop, I don't remember the board saying, you know, we should cut these fund transfers.
No, I don't think we said that.
And so I'm looking at, those are the ones, and that's why I was hoping to have a little more granular detail. But those are the big ones that I could see, those are in the narrative. And those are what I'm saying. I'm disagreeing with cutting those expenses for 2022. I might be the only one that's fine.
Well, can we talk about them separately? The OPEB, you gave an explanation about the OPEB, right? You looked at who potentially is retiring. You looked at how much money we already have in that balance, and staff said, we don't need to fund that.
Right. But the OPEB was one of, we have a long-term liability. We've now capped that, which is excellent, but we've been
Yeah.
putting in money
Yeah.
that we didn't need to spend for the last 5 years
Right,
because we knew we were going to need it in the future.
right.
And now we're
Agreed.
saying, well, we have enough in the fund to cover the next 2 years. But the whole point of creating the fund was so that we know we had the expenses at some point.
Right, I agree.
So these are all very similar concepts of, we know we're going to have these expenses.
Right.
Do we pay incrementally into that amount? Or do we start adjusting where they come from and eventually take it to
Okay.
a borrowing question?
Okay, so let's move to the fire apparatus. Okay, we know we're gonna have expenditures over the next, forget the plan, is it 15 years or so that it goes out to? So you're saying, take that money that we know we're going to need to spend over those 15 years and take it from the general fund and put it into a different line item that's fire apparatus.
We have that line item, so it's.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
but actually move the money from,
That's we've been doing up to this point was
Right.
about $330,000 per year. That was what the plan
Yep.
stated was, hey, well,
Yep.
here's all the expenses. If we put in this amount, we'll be able to cover
Right.
those future expenses. And then we cut free 2 years in a row, and we're looking at cutting it for a third year.
right, and staff is saying, don't move the money, borrow when you need it.
Right, it's a question of who do you want to pay, who do you
Right.
want to
The
have
current
pay that
residents
expense?
or the residents. that
Prior
have-
residents or the ones who are actually using the vehicle?
And I think you're not looking at that argument. You're saying,
I mean, every decision we make for spending is going to
Sure.
be all over the map on that one. There's no
Okay.
consistency on that.
but your
Right.
argument is we have money in the general fund.
I'm in favor of doing regular budgeted expenditures into that fund so that we can make payments from it.
Consistent payments.
But
from-
those consistent payments, whenever we get to an ouch point, are the first
Right.
ones that are cut. And then,
Right.
once you cut those expenses, and now we have more of a surplus.
Yeah.
And if we have that surplus, let's go backfill.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from Glenn and Dave a little bit, I think you been there a little bit and said, hey, guys, we have X millions of dollars sitting, which is 30 to 40%, right? Of the balance that's just sitting there. Why aren't we talking about actually reducing the millage rate, right? That's what you guys are saying.
I'm not sure I'm saying that.
Okay,
I'm just
Glenn
saying,
said that.
I just said that, but we're in
Yeah.
a position we could do it.
Okay,
Or we could take $1 million and put it in the apparatus fund and
Yeah.
make it good.
I just look at these funds as they belong to the taxpayer. We're extracting them from their lifestyle, if you will. And if we have 36%, which is really double our policy.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, and if you want to move those dollars from the general fund into fire apparatus and continue to do that each year, then the fund balance in the general fund is going to go down more quickly.
Yeah.
And you're going to get to a point of needing to generate more revenue faster
or borrow.
or borrow.
Right.
So you could set the whole program up as, we'll meet that obligation by borrowing at the time that it's required. And the people who would then be paying for it are the people who are actually using the vehicle.
There's a philosophical difference. It just is a philosophical difference. And I don't mean to be difficult. I'm not. It's just, I've heard Ethan say this so many times. And I've worked with Ralph for many, many years. And we as an elected body, we need staff to be operating at a level where we can be confident and know that they are following what the board's philosophical perspective is to achieve the goals. And if we are not giving staff clear direction, staff will do what they think they want us to do, and then they end up with not very clear direction, and board members are kind of in the dark. And I'm just looking for, not being difficult, Ralph, just saying, if Ralph's his philosophical perspective is, look, I'm trying to maintain a fairly stable year in and year out taxing level and a fairly reliable source of income revenues for the taxpayers. And I can do it by moving dollars around the funds with some long-term understanding of things. Then he needs to make that case to us. And we all need to say we support that. By voting on this budget as it is right now, we will continue to endorse Ralph's approach there. It's about a $340,000 deficit. And Ralph is saying, we can transfer funds around and we're good to go. And what Ethan has continued to say, what I have continued to hear, is may not be what you're saying, but I continue to hear from Ethan is, I philosophically don't agree with that. I think we should have non-deficit budgeting in this township. And I think we ought to be moving dollars into funds, but those funds are designed to be spending taxpayer dollars on, and we should not be budgeting like we've been.
Okay, I heard you. How are you solving the $340,000 fund balance?
No,
Or deficit, I'm sorry.
Deficit.
To me, it sounds like if we do what you say, we would have a $640,000, right? You'd move another $300,000. Is that true?
The original budget draft, there was a deficit of 900,000.
Right. So somewhere between 600,000 and 900,000.
So, I mean, the real question is, at some point, we're gonna have to make the payment. Like,
Yeah.
the bill's gonna have to get paid at some
Yeah.
point, whether you're increasing your debt service fees in 5 years
Yeah.
when the next apparatus is due or not. At some point, we have to raise more revenue. But when you look at these numbers, we should be building in the long-term capital expenses of the township, which we have in our capital reserve. The
Mhm.
other big cap, like we have
Mhm.
these ones, if we know in the future we're gonna have those, we make regular payments.
Right.
So it's one of, if we're planning on paying more for stuff in the future, then we have revenue to cover, then we either need to say, we need to cut expenses or we need to raise revenue. But it's one of, it may not be, we're not at an ouch problem now.
Yeah.
But I think we need to plan for if we don't make changes, we will have ouch problems in the next couple of years. And this was, we did this a couple of years ago when we went from 33% to 50%. Right. We looked at the plan, we built the plan, said we need to make these payments. We raised taxes to do so because we knew we were going to increase future spending, but start raising the revenue now because we have slow incremental raises, not big spikes in tax rates. I mean, this is similar to, look at Conestoga Valley School District. It's slow incremental raises because there's known capital expenses and those costs are rising at a faster rate than your property tax can bring in. That's just the reality of being in it, tied to property taxes. So it's just one of, do you want spikes later or do you want slow incremental rate changes now?
Is there everyone else hearing what Ethan said? Okay. I mean,
But we're saying we're spending these dollars.
Yeah.
But we'll either pay for it later or we'll pay for it slowly now.
the original budget, $900,000 deficit budget.
And yeah, part of what I heard at the workshop was, we don't like $900,000.
Yeah, I think I heard that as well.
Yeah.
And I also remember.
That's absolutely what we said.
Yeah, I also remember a conversation about OPEB agreeing that
We just move it to a trust. Yeah.
yeah, we should move to a trust, get a better investment. And there was also, we know it ends and we know we have a good balance. So I heard that as well. I guess even your point is, should we be paying for fire? Let's just stay with fire for a second. Should we be making consistent payments to fire now? And my feeling is yes. I'd rather do that than say we're going to borrow. I agree with that. Okay. I don't know where the
I
rest of the
don't.
board. You don't. You rather.
Well, this is the first time I've heard staff present to us the idea that perhaps we ought to be financing future apparatus as opposed to putting dollars into an apparatus fund to pay those capital expenses out in cash at that time. It's the first I've heard it.
Right. We've never talked about that before, Ralph.
I don't remember. I mean, it's been a while. I think at the initial point where that fund was started, knowing myself to the point that I do, I think I probably would have raised the question of
Yeah. I remember it
Should
being
we-
discussed.
Yeah.
alternatively borrow and
So I missed that. So now I look at that and think, why wouldn't we look at that?
Well, I think you can do that math at that time, but you can only borrow if you haven't been putting money away. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Why put taxpayer dollars away today if I can take 20 years of taxpayers' dollars and taxpayers
Because
themselves.
if we're investing it at 7 or 8%, or even 6%, it's better than, 2% bond.
My concern is the taxpayer can do the same thing with his money.
That's true.
So
That's true.
why should government be stockpiling a whole lot of cash regardless of,
I'm with you,
these
Dave.
funds, we looked at the budget, we
Yeah.
identified the needs in the funds, and I think we've appropriately funded them. Now, we can put more money in it, granted, but to what end? So, you're paying it forward, I understand, but
Right.
I'm not sure that's an appropriate approach for a government agency using our neighbor's money.
So then again, what I'm hearing is I'm at the place where I don't want to raise the millage rate, right? I think, Ethan, what I'm hearing from you, nuanced, saying that we probably should be doing small increases, and Glenn saying down, low, less, right? If we have that amount, I think that's what I'm hearing from you as well, Dave.
Why
Well-
worry about, every year we've been budgeting the right amount for fire apparatus, so
But we haven't made payments for 3 years.
we're okay. We're not.
I think Glenn, the future requirement, we're not going to be okay unless we quickly catch up. Or as Ralph is suggesting, one option would be is don't put the money in there right now. Let's rethink the entire apparatus fund concept and think about it in terms of the township's commitment to pay for a portion of apparatus comes through debt financing. That's what Ralph suggested. But Ethan is correct, is that we haven't been funding it, so we're not okay. It is going to catch us.
And it may be a combination of there may be debt that's paid out of an apparatus fund. It's a matter of, depending on how many pieces you have to buy, you may be making regular monthly payments out of that
So
apparatus fund.
if you fund an apparatus fund, you can pull the dollars out of it to pay your debt, but it's a dedicated source of money to use towards that.
So you're going to put money away and borrow?
That's what we do with the sewer fund, so. We put money into, a lot of these funds we're putting money away into for future budgeted projects, where some of that's matching funds to go to, we're getting a grant as well, or we're using debt service. And so, yes, we use all 3 of those methodologies in a lot of our funds. We use money from our general fund transfer, that may be matching dollars, we use grants, and we use debt. Those are all 3 mechanisms we use. And all should be on the table for all of these things, but it's a matter of, one of the benefits of having some funds like this is it's a known dedicated pool of money. So similar to an OPEB, you could finance an OPEB too. There's no reason you have to put money into a fund. You could also finance that at a future date and then drop money into that. But it's there's a benefit if you're promised something as the retiree who's going to get that benefit, it's more comforting to you knowing it's in a fund that the township can't touch when the next budget challenge comes up.
I think the issue with OPEB, though, is we involve more than one township in that. And so how do you address that through borrowing?
You just be splitting up the cost of that at the time.
Well, I guess
it's the same formula that we use now.
There's a legal obligation to meet the OPEB requirement. And especially once some or all of it's put in a trust, there's no other way to use those dollars. That it's committed, it's obligated, it's done. The other reserves, I'll call them, are choices. The board chooses to set money aside or not, and then there are choices made going forward from there on how you use those dollars. You could put all the general fund money in the fire apparatus and then decide, well, we're going to use that for general fund purposes, other general fund purposes. So it's just reserves, whichever fund it's in.
Okay, so Ethan, if we back up 15, 20 minutes or so, you said that, second-class township code, we should have a balanced budget. So,
And so there's a requirement to be, goal should be balanced, and it's funny, you could balance it for reserves.
Mhm.
You wanna look at all the reserves, we've got
Yeah.
$12 million of reserves.
Yep.
And then it also should be accurate. So some of the changes that were made, at least in the narrative, changed our estimates of revenue, which I think is good, but it is one of, what I'm seeing is at some point, we're gonna have an imbalance. Whether it's this year, next year, or the year after that. And my other concern is how much money are we gonna be putting in to backfill some of these things? Because some of these there should be some more strings attached to some of these funds that the money should be spent. If we're saying, if we've been budgeting for 5 years to put money into the apparatus fund, I think the expectation is we're going to spend it on that.
And we have, all those dollars have been spent only for that purpose. And there would be enough based upon what I have in the draft and the same amount next year. There's enough for the next purchase.
and then we'd have to make a decision.
And then from there,
Should we borrow?
I'm suggesting it would be borrowed,
Yeah.
for each after that.
So then Ralph's decision-making for this year and for next year relates to the apparatus replacement fund is being driven by his third year projection, which is refinance.
Right.
But it's a choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts, Ethan? What would you like to propose?
Those are the known items. I don't know
Yeah.
what the other changes to the
Okay,
budget
so
were.
you asked for an Excel document, so you can dig deeper into it. At this point, to meet the timeline, you're looking for an authorization to have the budget for public review, right? Authorize the
Right.
budget.
And there is the expectation there would be changes to the draft
Yeah.
between now and the time
Yeah.
that you would adopt it.
They just have to be within the 10%. I think is the.
That's after you've adopted, that's after you adopt the budget, then there has to be.
What's the range of things we can make changes to prior to adoption? I think there's a range on that as well from an advertised budget.
I'm willing to check on that, but I don't know about
I think we're close enough, I think.
Yeah, and I'll just make the comment I make every
Yeah.
year as well,
Make-
which is if we could have more than one budget meeting prior to
Yeah.
this point, that would be helpful.
You're looking for a motion to authorize
Yes, I am.
advertising?
Thank
So
you.
moved.
Thank you. Okay, motion made by Dave, second by Glenn. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have budget advertised for public inspection.
Thanks.
11, thank you. Thanks. Managers report, Lincoln Highway Streetscape Implementation Report.
Just very briefly, we continue to meet with the consultant. This is really kind of an ICDA thing, but I know the board likes to stay involved in that. Branding, gateways, wayfinding, we're still working on that. We expect to have a steering committee meeting scheduled for early in December. And, we'll hopefully have things recommended by them in December that the ICDA would look at in January. We're also working with the township's engineer consultant on the scope of work for the Strasburg Pike to Oakview Road Trail project. We had a meeting with them earlier today. So we hope to get that done shortly.
Anything else? Sach?
No,
Okay, great. Anything else from the board?
Move we adjourn.
Okay, say it again, Yvonne.
Move we adjourn.
Oh, thank you. Second. Motion made by Glenn, second by Ethan. Any other comments from the board or the public? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
Good to see you.